Greetings, saxophone people. Today in this video I'm going to discuss a requested topic which will be the Otto Link family of vintage mouthpieces. For my last video I had a lot of requests, so why didn't I make a long in-depth video discussing the different models and qualities of the Otto Links. And so we're going to do that, and we're going to talk. So Otto Link, of course, has a pretty long history in the mouthpiece business, arguably the most famous and popular mouthpiece makers. I am going to start, I'm going to go from the Otto Link Tone Master, okay, up to the early Babbitt pieces. Of course, you know, they also have the Master Link and 4-star models, and the eburnated bar, rubber pieces, etc. But first of all, I don't have any of those on hand at the moment to discuss. And second of all, I'm not a huge fan of them personally, although they're good. It's not an issue of good or bad. It's just they have very large chambers, and I don't tend to play them because for me personally, they're just a lot of work to play. You got to fill them up with more air, and they don't protect as much. Now, some people love that. That's great. This isn't a value judgment. It's just I don't tend to play them that much, and I am not strictly running a business. I mean, I'm a collector and a player as much as anything else, so I tend to buy pieces that I also like so that I can enjoy them, and then, you know, if they don't work for me, I'll sell them. Or if I just have a lot, you know, I'll sell stuff. But I also want to enjoy them, and I don't tend to buy those pieces because I don't favor them so much. Now, others may have a different view on that, and I have no judgment about that. But in any case, I've had many of those over the years, but I don't have any now. Don't have any Master Link pieces. Don't have any eburnated bar rubber pieces. And so I'm going to start at the Tone Master. All right, we're going to go Tone Master, and then we're going to go, so Tone Master, the New York Tone Master, and then we're going to go to the early Super Tone Masters, known as the double rings, and then the transitional pieces, and then into the Florida models, double rings, no USA Super Tone Masters, USA Super Tone Masters, early Babbitt pieces, and the like. And we have, we'll talk about the metal pieces, and we'll talk about the hard rubber pieces for what I have. And we'll also discuss a few of the brass Dukoff models, which I consider to be kind of in the same family of mouthpieces, although it's a different maker. They're something of a copy, an altered copy, definitely in the same family of mouthpieces. So we're going to go through the range. We're going to talk about the details, the identifying characteristics, some of the playing characteristics, the design changes, and maybe we'll get some play test in there too. So welcome on the journey, and thanks for watching. The first mouthpiece we're going to look at is the Otto Link New York Tone Master. I have several examples of these here. The Tone Master actually has a few different blanks. They are mostly similar on the inside. There's some slight chamber variants, some finish variants, and the outer appearance has variants. The shape has variants. So let me see which is the oldest. I don't have the really old blank here today, but I have some slightly older ones. So this one's a little bit rough, but it is in original condition. So this is probably a middle period Otto Link Tone Master. We can see on the shank, we've got our Otto Link New York, Otto Link Co. Incorporated, Otto Link Company Incorporated, New York, New York. This is a 4-star facing, and we have a serial number here that says, I think that's either an I or an L, 82. Notice that this letter, notice the size of the font. So this is what I would consider a small font for the first part of the serial number. The earlier Tone Masters they could have serial numbers which were a bit longer, more digits. But in any case, the font was pretty small. The number font was always small, and the earlier letter font was usually pretty small. These say Registered U.S. Patent Office, serial number, blah, 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 blah. And some years back, and even now, you can probably find them, there was somebody out there who was making fake examples of Tone Masters back when Tone Masters were, hotly desired as the Coltrane, go-to piece, and people were hunting for those. That was sort of at the beginning of the internet craze and before. And people were making fake Tone Masters. They were sandcasting them, poor sand castings, and I mean, they weren't even accurate. I don't even know what they casted them from. But one of the ways you could always tell was they would take the serial number and the registered U.S. patent, and they'd be on the wrong sides or in the wrong locations, or all in the wrong places. So think of it this way: to identify a real one, when you're playing the piece, the serial number should be on your left side and the patent information on the right side. And of course, there's Otto Link and script. And Tone Master, okay. A lot of people make the mistake when they don't know about these pieces and they say, oh, the model, it's called a Tone Master 9. Well, it's not a 9. It's a Tone Master and a musical notation, obviously, to some people, I guess. Tone Masters, the facing is always stamped on the table. If you see Tone Master with a really big font facing, that's usually faked as well. The fonts are not huge. There's a couple different fonts that they used throughout the model, but they're not huge. Tone Masters were usually made, I mean, the largest size you would find in normal tip sizes was about a 6, and that's very hard to find. Normal sizes for Tone Masters run from something like 3 to 5 star. 6s were very hard to find. 6 stars, really hard to find. I've had a 7 and I've had a 9 star. Those are special orders for sure. And generally speaking, I mean, they're sort of it's a design. It's designed to play with a small tip opening, not a huge tip opening. And back then, small sizes were the norm. I mean, everybody played, mostly 4 star to 5 star. Some people played a 6. Which is by today's standards supposed to be a 90, but often they weren't. So this piece needs a little work. You can see it's got there's a little warp in the table. Someone got in there with a tool or did something wrong. I don't know what happened, but this piece is worn. You can see all the surfaces are kind of softened, but it is an original facing, and this is what they look like. Tone Master original tip finish is very rounded like that. They tend to have pretty thin side rails and a pretty thin tip rail, and really no baffle to speak of. When you take a look at that, you can see there's still some plating on the baffle area. You got some silver on there, a little bit leftover silver and gold. We can see it's pretty much a straight shot. It might have a little slight slope to it, just the way they finished it, but it's really not what I would call a baffle. It's pretty scooped out. The sidewalls, you can see it's got a pretty deep cut in here, scooped out, pretty big chamber. See that nice rounded, very nice hand finish work on these. And then we go in here, we take a look, and can we get some light? Yeah, you can see it's milled out. See that milled out belly in the chamber? That's their large chamber there. There we go. That's the big chamber back in there, and that's one of the things that gives the Tone Master its signature vibe. So this is the earlier period. It's not the earliest, it's like middle, really. The earlier ones would have had the shank kind of looks a little more bulky and imposing. Okay, this is like sort of medium big. The early ones have a big blocky kind of shank on them, and the body dimensions, the high and low of the body dimensions, just a little more bulky looking. But one of the ways you can also tell the middle and early period from the later one is the cutout for the bite plate. You see how this is slightly slanted? And we go here and we can see this cut is back slanted here, where they slanted it and they slid the bite plate in under those overhangs. So and then they sort of rounded them off when they finished it. That's the earlier style. And also you look at the bite plate from this direction, it's very, very rounded over the top. So the earlier Tone Masters, the whole bite area is very rounded. I'm sure that contributed to some really poor dental situations, but there we go. Anyway, maybe we need to have those horse teeth and poor dental situations in order to make that very special sound. I'm sure after watching this video, everybody's going to run out to their cosmetic dentist and have their teeth rearranged so they can finally sound like Coltrane. I hope not. Anyway, so this is sort of a middle period. Okay, here we'll have another example. This one, I can't say, is it earlier, is it later than the other one? It might be a little bit earlier. It looks a little more bulky. But it's pretty close. And we can look, there's a difference in the serial numbers. So that one is, I suppose this could be a 1 instead of an I, but this one is 008 quite clearly. But still small font, okay? So we've got small font in the serial numbers. This one is a 5, as you can see, small font 5. Somebody's done a little bit of cleanup or work on this table. I don't remember if I measured this. I don't think it was. It's pretty minor, whatever they did. They just sort of resurfaced it. But probably measures badly, like most of them do, after amateurs work on them. It's got some staining. There's your registered U.S. Patent Office. Otto Link Company Incorporated, New York, New York. All the same. And again, we have the rounded top, the rounded bite area, and the back slant cut divots for the bite plate. It's just another example. This one's, if you look at the interesting thing here is you look at the baffle area, you can see we've got a little more curve there. You see right up here, we've got a little bit of a rollover. And that little bit makes a difference. But really, with Tone Masters, the design of the mouthpiece, they didn't design this. It's very different from today's designs. There wasn't somebody thinking, well, let's put a lot of baffle in there to increase the sound projection and the brightness. No, really, these pieces were designed without baffle, and the way they got their brightness was through the facing. They had special facing curves which were designed. It was all very small tip sizes, which a lot of people today can't even figure out. You give them a small tip size, they're just like, I can't work that. They need a certain kind of reed, and everybody likes to play 7-star to 8-star, 9 big mouthpieces. That's what people think works today. And hey, if it works for them, great. But back in the old days, you would get your crisp, bright sound from what they called the spring, which was the curve of the facing, which determined how your reed would respond. So I call that reed brightness as opposed to baffle brightness. And so a baffle, don't get me wrong, baffle would help. It will make a difference. But that's not the primary mechanism through which these mouthpieces achieve their crisp brightness. And they're not terribly bright, really, but the brightness that they do have is achieved through the facing. And again, we can see there's your milled out chamber in there. Oh, better back up a little. There we go. There's your milled out chamber. And so these pieces, they really didn't have the baffle. Some of them are brighter than others, and this, like if you read the stories about Coltrane, and because he favored these Tone Masters, people were sticking wax and bubble gum and all kind of things into the baffle areas to brighten them up. Not everybody, but they were a very popular mouthpiece. They're made popular. Of course, Coltrane played them. Hank Mobley, you can see them all over those album covers. Charlie Rouse, really lots of people. Everybody went through the Tone Master in that time period. I think we're talking about 1940s to the early 1950s. And so here we'll take a look at a late period. This is a late period Tone Master. The last design, okay, before they changed. And this would have been the complete set here. You got your cap, you got your ligature, and so this is a late one. This is what I call the Coltrane or Blue Train Tone Master. And you can see it looks a little bit different. it is a change. So here's the slightly earlier one on top, the late one on bottom. It may be a little hard to see in the video, but you got to look for subtlety, and you'll notice that the shank here is more bulky and imposing, and this is just less. It's just kind of smooth. This smooths away from this curve, and this has like a big, clunky looking shank. It's pretty subtle. I'm sure some people are going to feel like, I don't see any difference here at all. The difference is really in this area. This one is more cut out, as you can see, and this is more subtle. So that is one way to tell. Actually, with these later ones, we can also usually tell that here, if we look at the shanks this way, that the length of the shanks, okay, is meaning the milling is longer on this one than it is on this one. These are really sort of understated, not a very big cutout as this one, and they're not as long, so that's why they're less bulky looking anyway. Not that it matters, but these are just aesthetic differences, so you can learn to understand how to look at them. It's pretty subtle. And so here here's the serial number. Look at that, G53. But look how big that G is, right? I think even the 53 is bigger, is it? Let's take a look. There we go. All over, the fonts are all bigger, okay? So when you get to the late period Tone Master, you got the large fonts, okay? It's usually 3-digit serial number with a letter at the beginning and 2 numbers after. This is a rare piece. This is a J.A. Joe Allard facing, which was a custom facing. It's pretty small. It's about, I think it's a 4-star or something like that. Plays absolutely great at that size. I mean, that's what it is. It's not a big piece. It's not designed to be a big piece. And honestly, we don't need every single one of these to be ripped open to a 7-star. And the truth is, people have been doing that for years. And I mean, I might open the ones that are, need restoration. They're slightly destroyed, so I'll increase them. But generally speaking, I mean, these are what they are. And when you open them up, if you take a 4-star or a 5 Tone Master and you open it up to 7, most people, what they aren't telling you is that they're actually shortening the mouthpiece, because you don't have so much metal up here, okay? And when you open a mouthpiece, I mean, look how thin that tip is. I mean, there's a little metal as far as I'm concerned. That's pretty good. But if you want to open it up, I mean, if this is a 4-star and you're going to take it up, you want to take it up to 95 or 100. I mean, you're definitely going to pass that amount of metal. You'd be up so you'd be sanding it, and my fingernail would be here, and then you'd be up to here in height. You'd go past the top of that tip, and then what would you do? Well, you'd run out of material, so you'd bring your tip would be like back here, and you'd say, okay, let's shorten the mouthpiece. You'd shorten it back to here. Okay, you'll see these on eBay. There'll be these mouthpieces that's like, you'll see only this little bit of brass in front of the tooth plate, and people who don't know, they're like, oh, wow, it's an 8 Tone Master. What a rare piece. I mean, we got a lot of charlatans out there, a lot of sharks, and a lot of fakers. And you'll get pieces like this where you'll actually find a piece. Some people even replate it. Maybe it has no plating. Now look how big that facing stamp is. Let me take a little interlude here. Look at that. Small 5, big J.A. That's a big font. But you'll get pieces that are... people will reface them. They'll really just cut them to shreds. They'll open them up to 8, right? And then they'll restamp them 8 after they have resurfaced the table. So the original facing stamp is gone. And they'll buy a set of dies and they'll stamp it as 8. And then you'll see that mouthpiece, and it'll have a big baffle in it too, because of course you'll end up with a lot of metal here when you start sanding away at it. And then you'll only see just this little bit of metal in front of the bite plate up to about here. And they'll say it's an original 8, and it's got a great baffle, and it projects like mad, and blah blah. It's all kind of crap that they're selling. And they used to do that because it's like they would make money from having a bigger tip opening that everybody wanted. Because the real Tone Masters, when you're talking about ever since 1990 something up to the 2000s, I mean, nobody can play those 4-star and 5 mouthpieces. They just can't deal with it. They don't play the reeds that suit it. And everybody wants to play a 7 and 8, and they think, wow, I found a 7 and 8 Tone Master. It's original. Wow, it's amazing. It's a rarity, and they're willing to pay, $800 for it or whatever, $900, and it's a rarity. And it's really just a piece of junk. Somebody hacked it to bits,
shortened it, put a huge baffle in it, it's really no longer a Tone Master at all. It's just something that's been cut to pieces. But they were raking in the money on those things with the fake snapping. And I have to say, we even have some famous big name mouthpiece people who did that. And, you know, they don't want to admit it, but they did that. Restamping pieces, selling hacked up, junked mouthpieces. Well, they made money. More power to them, or not. Less integrity to them. But what are you going to do? Anyway, so originally, I mean, if you look at this, I mean, you're not seeing original Tone Masters with a big baffle. They don't have any baffle, okay? Occasionally you'll get a piece or two which has, like, I had one that was a 5-star, and it had a nice little shelf baffle from here, but it was really subtle, you know? It's not a baffle by today's standards. It's a subtle little baffle, and it's short. It's like that. And so this is what they look like. I mean, this is a very original piece. It's got a lot of gold plating. It's never been messed with. And it plays wonderful. But look at that. You see any baffle? No, there's no baffle there. It's a very gentle slope to a long straight shot. Okay, no real baffle, just very gentle. Okay, now look at that tip finish. So thin, and it's all done by hand. Okay, nice thin handwork, thin rails. This piece does need a bit of a cleaning. I got this recently, so it needs a little white vinegar treatment. Nice thin rails with a lot of rollover and very even. The thickness is just even. I mean, this piece was probably done by Otto Link himself. I've seen a lot of vintage Otto Links that have this exact facing style. Maybe it wasn't Otto Link himself, who knows, but it was somebody who could repeat this configuration. He could repeat this contour over and over again. And they're beautiful. They play beautifully, and I've seen a lot of Links that were done by this same hand, and you can tell, you know, the style. If you study carefully, you can tell the style in the hand of a craftsman like this. Now look at that bite plate. See how the straight cut on the sides of the bite plate compared to that. See, you got your slant, your back cut, and look at this. It's a very thin bite plate here, and it's just a straight cut on either side. That is how you tell a late model Blue Train, Coltrane Tone Master. Now look at this. See how flat it is on top? The bite plate? Well, it's a minor difference, okay? Minor difference, but it is a difference, okay? Rollover, you know, rounded versus flatter, okay? The later ones are flatter. They also tend to be kind of short. Is it shorter? Let's see. This I may be proved wrong with this example anyway. These look to be the same length. It's a tad shorter, but I can't. It's just so subtle, like you can't see it. It's just right there. They tend to be a little bit shorter. In some cases, I don't have a really early example here, but if I did, you'd probably notice that the bite slope area on the earlier ones can be longer as well. So this is like shorter here. So this is the late period. These do play a little bit different than the earlier ones. It's not by anything. I don't think you're gonna be able to see it between these two. I suppose it's possible. Let me see. Well, look at that. You can see a difference, can't you? So the one on the right, look at that milled out chamber. You see that it's shorter. The one on the left might be equally as deep. I mean, the one on the left is shorter. The one on the right is longer. See it? It's this one. It's got more area milled out, and this one has less. Well, wouldn't you look at that? And also, if you kind of look at the, well, that's unclear, but the floor you can't tell in a video like this. But generally speaking, these later ones, they do feel like they have a little slightly smaller chamber, you know, and they play a little more compact. So that's that. Now the Tone Master. After the Tone Master, we notice this design. This is a ligature track here, okay, and the track that holds a ligature. The Tone Masters, they wanted to cut them off. It's a nice aesthetic decision. They cut them off here rather than extending to the edge of the barrels. When you get to the transitional Tone Master, the first thing they did was they lengthened these to the edges of the barrel, and most of the other parts are the same. I think the chamber is probably the same. These go to the edges of the barrel, and in some cases, some of the transitional, they have the rare and vaunted triple ring mouthpiece, which has 1, 2, and then a third ring right about here. And that's the transitional tone master, which of course I do not have because those mouthpieces are just unfindable. But let's take a look. This is the cap and ligature. Okay. This is the Tone Master cap. That's what it looks like. I don't think I need to do 20 minutes on this, but there it is. Okay. It's slightly rounded with a little hole. That's what they look like. The ligature though, these ligatures are nice. It's got the vertical lines, okay? And you see that brass chimney inside, okay, holding the screw. Excuse me. And, you know, made of brass. They'll be silver and gold plated or nickel plated sometimes. And often you will see these with the words Otto Link stamped in a circle around. On this one, they're not, but sometimes they are. Now these ligatures, they're pretty nice, but they are at least currently I've seen them selling for about $150. And the problem is, you know, they wear out though. So it's made out of pretty light metal, and that's one of the reasons they're good, is because they don't really deaden vibration too much. But it's light metal, and you can see this one's a little bent up, right? They get used, they get bent. Like if you drop them, they just bend immediately. And these feet, they kind of wear out. So what happens is, and another thing that happens is, see that you got that little rivet inside that's holding your screw into your screw plate, right? That area will wear out, and then the rivet will no longer hold. So when you'll screw this in, it'll just be the rivet pushing through, and the plate won't really push through anymore. And then you look at your reed, and you've got this little dent, circle indentation, and so it's being only held on that one point instead of, 4 points. And so they start to wear out. That does happen, and so you get a lot of ligatures, and people say, well, those Otto Link ligatures really suck. Well, yeah, when they wear out, they suck. Or if they don't fit properly, if it's the wrong one for that mouthpiece, then they'll suck for sure. If the angle of the plate is no longer good, the feet have bent up or whatever, or the rivet is pushing through, it's not going to seal your reed properly, and then it is going to kind of suck. And, they can be repaired, they can be sort of adjusted to a certain point, and then when the metal wears out, it's like, okay, you'd have to do surgery. Once that rivet's gone, you'd have to do ligature surgery, and it starts to become kind of cost ineffective. But if you get a good one, if they're in good shape, wow, these are really good ligatures, and they'll let your reed vibrate in a nice way that a clamping type of ligature won't. All right, so here we have the New York Tone Master. It just takes me a long time to find the right reed and everything, and I still don't think I found the right reed, but it'll work for the moment. Personally, for me, these early ones, I always feel more comfortable on a Super Action when I play these. If I put these on a Mark 6, I just feel weird. Like the Mark 6 spreads a lot more to me than the Super Action does. The Super Action is like a more focused horn. So I've got a number 3 reed on here, which is a little bit hard. I like soft reeds myself. I'm not making a judgment for anybody else, but I usually play like around a 2.5. This is a 3, I go a little bit harder. It's maybe a little too soft for the mouthpiece. Probably is, but I just don't like playing a board. It's not comfortable for me. Now check out this reed, which is ridiculous. Just changes the thing entirely. And this is also a 3. Seems to be a universe apart though. And that is why I love reeds so little. That's ridiculous. It's supposed to be brighter, but it's very, very aggressive and bright. It's also a little more work to play. It's a strange one. All right, just as a little add-on here, I just put this Tone Master with one of those darker 3 reeds on my Mark 6 as an experiment, and I think I like it. So let's just add this into the mix. Well, there that is. I think that kind of works pretty good. All right, so we're going to move on, and we're going to look at the transitional pieces from the Tone Master moving into the Super Tone Master. Now, I don't have the triple ring transitional pieces. I know some people do. Of course, they would be very expensive, and it hasn't been something that I've needed to chase down. But we're going to look at the Super Tone Masters. So before we do, though, let's take a quick look. I forgot about this. This is kind of fun. It's a Baritone Master. Okay, there we go. Tone Master. And it's a baritone, so it's a Baritone Master. And this is kind of a cool little set. They would have come with this this reed protector. And there's your vertical line ligature that looks a little bit different. It's got a wider, does it have a wider cap? No, it's just got a lower cap. But look at that. Whoa, Otto Link. That's pretty impressive. How could they fit such a tiny stamp on a tiny little... Well, there it is. Otto Link, the vaunted stamp that I told you about. The mystery stamp that was missing the last time. So, that's the baritone ligature. The Baritone Master ligature. Pretty big. And the mouthpiece looks the same. Look at that finish. Same finish. A little bit more squared off, but beautiful tip finish. No real baffle to speak of. It's a... What is it? Well, the jury's out. Is it a 5 or a 6? It's a 6. There we go. Rare 6. It's a big one. For this time period, that's a big one. Look at that long shank on the Baritone Master. Anyway, that is that. Cool mouthpiece. Big piece of brass. All right, so let's look at the transitional pieces into the Super Tone Master. So here is an early one, okay? See, they've lengthened the ligature track, and they changed the design of the shank aesthetically, and it says super in quotation marks, which means it must be super, extra super, or sarcastically super, or it's kind of super. Or in today's terms, they would say literally super. Okay, it's a souped up Tone Master. And there we go. Look at that serial number, H85. It looks like the same font as the late Tone Master. Look at that. Same font, G53, H85. Kind of like the same run of mouthpieces from the late one into the early double ring Super Tone Master. Now look at that long bite plate, okay? That's a long bite plate. This is like someone was worried about all those buck-toothed, snaggle-toothed saxophone players who were willy-nilly putting their teeth all over that bite area quite irresponsibly, and they figured, we better protect the whole area from those wild biters. And so they put this big old bite plate, which is kind of like a mouthpiece safety helmet for your mouth, or for the mouthpiece. I'm not sure which one of you is being protected. Mouthpiece is protected from your horrible teeth, or you're protected from the brass. Anyway, it's a comfortable bite plate, and it's fine. It's a great design until you want to reface a mouthpiece, of course. And you know, people, well, not reface, but open. People like to open these mouthpieces up, obviously, and they open these things up and say, oh, no problem. I mean, look at this, okay? Look at the huge tip on this piece. The thickness, I mean, that's like a anvil of brass. It's huge. Incredibly thick tip. So you could open this thing quite a bit, and somebody might get kind of carried away, and they'd open the heck out of it. And the problem would be, they'd open it, and then they'd start sanding in here, right, to blend that baffle area into their new tip height. And what would happen? Look how far forward that bite plate goes. It's right about here. The line of that bite plate is where my fingernail is. It's really far forward. So they're cutting away on that baffle. The birds are singing outside. You know, they're enjoying their breakfast or dinner, whatever it is. You know, all is right with the world. They're cutting away merrily at the bite plate. And oh my God, they've cut right through the brass and the rubber is peeking through, laughing at them, saying, you just destroyed $1,000 mouthpiece. Ha, you fool. Okay. So, you know, when you see those double rings with the little black spots peeking through at the corners, I mean, that's like, it's pretty much like a glaring signpost that says, I'm a destroyed mouthpiece. Now, will it play? It might. It's kind of a, then, hey, maybe it's special, right? It becomes a hybrid hard rubber and brass mouthpiece because your mouthpiece is brass, but you got your little hard rubber vibrating spots, vibrating holes on the two sides of the mouthpiece. We could market it that way and say it's a new hybrid hard rubber brass mouthpiece with inner sidewall tone boosters. That's what we'll call them, tone boosters. We've revealed the tone boosters. Seriously though, once you start cutting into the bite plate, I mean, your tip is in danger of just cracking right off. It's really quite a hacked mouthpiece. People did that a lot though. Unbeknownst to them, there was a bite plate on the other side of the mouthpiece. All they had to do was check, but you know, it's just hard to do things in general these days, so people shy away from doing them, such as checking. Anyway, this is the Supertone Master double ring with the long bite plate. Now look at that tip finish. Nice, huh? A little more squared off. A little thicker. A little more squared off than the last version of the... There we go. Look at that. It's thicker and kind of squared off than the last version of the Tone Master. This was probably done by a different person. The side rails are thicker. The whole thing is just a little bit different. Probably done by a different person, or at least with a different attitude. Not going to make a huge difference in the playing, but a little bit. Now, here's your baffle area. See if I get there we go. Not much baffle, no big change, right? Not much going on. It's pretty much a similar mouthpiece to that late period Tone Master, although it is different than the earlier Tone Masters. There's your stamp, 4-star. Is that the same size? Let's take a look. Oh, wow, the JA doesn't count. It's so big. Here's a slightly earlier one. The 5, well, look at that. The 5 is for sure smaller on the Tone Master. The other Tone Master, oh, it's smaller. This wins the award for biggest font of the day. Well, not biggest. The JA was bigger, but hey, we were numbers. Can't compare numbers to letters. So it's a slightly bigger font, 4-star. H85 serial number, everything else is kind of similar. That's a pretty big imposing shank, even for a double ring, how thick it is and rolled off. This is an early one, okay? I believe this is a very early double ring. The later double rings, you'll see the shank is thinner, okay, and less imposing. This is a 4-star, it's a pretty small size. I have played this mouthpiece, and it actually rips. It's great. It's bright and crispy and fun. If you have the right reed. I mean, it's not big, so you can't use a super soft reed on it. But that tip is huge, so one day if I or somebody else ever thinks, well, it is legitimately hard to play a 4-star, this is a candidate to open up by the right hand. This is the New York Supertone Master double ring, the 4-star, and I've got the same plastic cover reed on it. And good Lord, this mouthpiece is, like, to me, way more comfortable. That's not necessarily because the chamber, it's probably just the facing. Maybe that JA facing is just weird to me. I have trouble getting it to go. This doesn't have like really much more baffle or any more baffle than that Tone Master, but it's just a more concise and easy to play facing. Now I want to try the, let's put that dark reed back on. All right, I haven't played this reed yet on here. I don't know what it sounds like. So it's dark on here too, but it still feels more comfortable than it did on the Tone Master. So let's look at another. That's our 4-star early double ring, and here's another. New York Super Tone Master double ring, and this is a slightly later one. So I believe it's later. And look at the difference in the shanks. Look at that. Wow, huge, amazing. One is rounded off, the other is sort of squared off, and the rounded off one is thicker. Look at that. It's like a bigger, thicker shank. So this one is a little bit more like the Tone Master in a way. That's why it's a really early one, I believe. And this is starting to get long and straight like the later Floridas, etc. It's all a very gradual progression. So we're looking at this one, and this is D76 with the same font as the previous and the same font as the late period Tone Master with a pretty straight and less imposing shank. Okay, notice here it still says Otto Link Co. But is the Otto Link Co. Incorporated? Is that now gone? Discontinued? Let's see. Look at that. Otto Link Co. New York, New York. All right, and here's your Tone Master, and look at that. Otto Link. Oh, that's gone there too. It's just like a ... But here, Otto Link Co. Inc. Look at that. Now, I'm willing to bet that maybe their stamp just wore out, because we do kind of have the bottoms, the ... So did they mean to just go Otto Link Co. ... I don't know. But anyway, it's gone. And look at this. Here's a vaunted 6. This is a very rare mouthpiece because it's big for these, okay? For these early ones, it's really hard to find a bigger size. 6 is pretty damn big for these. Long bite plate, squared off bite cuts, okay? And there it is. This relatively thick tip as well. Now here, look at this. It's magic, but look. Look at that. You got a little baffle. There you go. There's your little shelf baffle. It's tiny, but there it is. See that? See that angle? That's not light tricks. That's what the piece is. You can see it. There it is. There's your little angle. See that? Right? Goes right up to about here. You got little straight shelf baffle. Somebody got a little excited. Either they partied too much the night before, or they were excited that they were going to party this next night. Somebody got excited working on this mouthpiece. Said, "Oh, we're gonna make it a little bit bright. Watch out, everybody! You're gonna blow the walls down with that tiny, several millimeter baffle. It's pretty small, but it matters. And this piece does play. Let me see if I can get it good. There, yeah, okay, there we go. This piece does. There it is. Look at that. This piece does play with a little extra punch to it. Okay. Somebody played this a lot. As you can see, they wore that facing down. Should have been predictable areas. This is a really great playing mouthpiece. It's not super bright by today's standards, but it's fun because it's a little bit bigger too, so it's a little easier to deal with. So there's your 6 Super Tone Master New York. All right, I'm gonna put the same dark 3 reed on here, which I don't like this reed, but I'm playing it anyway. I'm gonna switch. I'll give it one more chance. See if it does anything halfway civilized on this mouthpiece. I have my doubts. Wow, okay, it really goes on this one. Well, it's easier. Anyway, I have another 3 here. I'm just gonna a 3 that I'm gonna try. I think this one might be even worse, but this is what it is. You're along for the ride today. If you're still watching these videos, then you got nothing to complain about with me trying to find a reed, because you're still here. And I mean, nobody's totally sane should still be watching these videos. So let's see. Well, somehow that's brighter. I'll try this last attempt to make this show this mouthpiece best face, and then we're gonna move on. All right, that's more civilized. So let's see. Yeah, okay, so we're kind of getting to the, moving up in the Supertone Master, so now I'm going to take out the Mark 6. I guess I'll be happier. This is an 87,000 Mark 6, and that SBA was a 48,000. So this 87,000 Mark 6 is my normal thing that I play. And I'm still on the New York double ring 6, and it goes good on this one. That's maybe better. Well, that is more cooperative with this horn. Now, I still think this reed's a little bit soft for this piece, but you get a general sense of where that piece can go. All right, and so that's the 6 New York.